And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
June 20th, 2024, New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast. I'm your most complaint cop, NYPD. This is your 265 Police Live series. I'm the co-host of the podcast, along with John McCarry, founder and co-host of the podcast. We bring you New York City shootings. New York City Spike, 50%. Dude, you got to cut this. I'm sorry.
Nah, get out of here. Keep going. New York City shooting spike 50%. New York Post article. What do you think about that, Eric? Are you surprised by this? Did you expect it to happen?
Well, listen, it's no shocker to me right now, right? The Dream Team has been bragging about apprehending all these firearms, which they are doing. They're doing their job. Which correlates to the crime that's out there right now. There's obviously an increase in crime. You and I both were anti-crime sergeants. We did plainclothes work. I was a special operations lieutenant. And years ago, especially when there was this 3-year rule that if you got caught with a legal firearm, you were probably facing 3 years. It was pretty tough to get a firearm. When you grab someone with a legal firearm, you definitely stopped the shooting. You definitely saved someone's life. But right now, people are carrying firearms that are not even perpetrators. They're carrying firearms because they're scared, because New York City is lawless and it's out of control.
Absolutely. Let's look at this Post article. The Post article is by Larry Salona, Amanda Woods, Craig McCarthy, and George Fitzgibbons. All right. Let's go through the first of it. It looks like it's a long, hot summer already. Shooting spiked in the Big Apple last week by a whopping 50% compared to the same period last year, and the number of gunshot victims spiked by even a higher margin, NYPD stats show. Now, I confirmed that on the NYPD statistical website. That is true. So it's week to date is what they're looking at. Me and Eric always talk about arbitrary time periods, how they don't prove that crime is going up or down. However, when you see a spike in shootings like this over a 1 week period, I mean, that just shows what you're in for all summer. So like we said, crime appears to be statistically lower year to date. But if you look at the last 4 years, crime's trending up. And as the summer comes, those decreases will be erased.
Well, it's exactly that. We talk about crime stats all the time. And, I would go to CompStat quite often, especially working the South Bronx. CompStat would come up every 4 to 6 weeks. And crime easily, stats can be manipulated and could give a different perception. I always give this correlation. Just if someone is losing weight, if you're doing a big loser, you're doing some type of competition and you're trying to lose weight, you're going to see that you'll lose weight. But there might be points when you're losing weight where you kind of bounce back and you gain a pound or two. And it's the same thing when it comes to crime. And that's what the perception that this administration wants to give to the public. Well, crime is down. Right. And then we have little spikes that go up. They're doing it. They're kind of reverse engineering it. But what's really happening is crime ultimately is up. And they give you segments to show when the crime period is down for maybe several months or different week periods, when really the crime is actually up in comparison. So let's just say in comparison to the year prior, crime ultimately is up 50%. But then they give you a segment where it's down 30%, but it's still, if you do the figures, it's still up 20%. That's what they're doing. They're changing perceptions, complete lie. But what's important also, as a crime strategist, especially if John and I were in part of the administration right now, we would look at the time of day that crimes are happening, and we would address it properly. Deployment according to what crimes are happening during the day, and there would be a strategic response. But right now, there can't be a strategic response that's going to be efficient. Why? Because we have a diminished police department. So despite what they're telling you, it's pretty much impossible. Right now, they're filling a 10-pound bag with 50 pounds of shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also important to note, right? We're only speaking about shootings, and they say, oh, shootings down and shooting victims are down year to date. However, we just said they increased by more than 50% last week. But I think it's important to note something that Sam Antar, the former CFO of Crazy Eddie's, the known fraudster, he pointed out, and he actually, he's a statistical genius, and he looked at it and he said, well, they don't talk about When they talk about gun violence, they don't talk about crimes where guns were used. And if you look at that, what's going on in New York City, that is up significantly, but they don't keep track of it. They don't tell you. They don't tell you about all the people that were robbed with a firearm, that were hit with a firearm, that were strong-armed with a firearm, that were threatened with a firearm. None of those get taken into account in the crime stats. So it doesn't give a true picture of how many guns are on the street. And further in the article, it goes on to state, this is from an officer, a Brooklyn cop, obviously remains anonymous. He doesn't want the chocolate administration, the dream team, coming after him. So he says, the summer hasn't even officially started yet it's already getting out of hand, one Brooklyn cop told the Post. Everyone has a gun, and the shooters are getting younger. That's a bad formula for fighting crime.
Well, listen, we're critical of Mayor Eric Adams and this administration. All right, but at the same time, we always give a fair assessment, and we understand that as the summer starts to progress, that typically we do see a spike in shootings. We do see a spike in crime in comparison to other seasons. However, right now, we need to be fearful because the spike that we're seeing now is a much larger increase that I've seen in the past when I was on the job. And John, I'm sure you agree also, a 50% increase just in shootings alone. That's a huge increase in a week period, which is a huge indication and foreshadowing what we're headed for coming this summer. Because typically you will see some spikes, but not 50%. 50% is a vast spike and just a clear indication of what we're headed for this summer. I think that we're absolutely not prepared. I think that this administration has zero plan. Their only plan is omnipresence. But how can you have omnipresence when you don't actually have the presence in the department? The manpower that they're actually indicating to the public is a complete lie. I think when I left the department, September of 2022, it was about 34,000. And the amount of retirements that we've seen, it's impossible, the numbers that they're given in comparison to how many recruits they had, how many people are vesting, leaving, and how many cops Mayor Eric Adams has fired. Complete lie. We are headed for some dark times.
And I got to say, the number that you just gave was complete farce as well. When you left in 2022, did not reflect the amount of people that actually left the department in that times. That was the height of the mandates where they forced people out. They forced people to vest, resign. It wasn't a true number. There was no way they had 34,000 at that point. There's no way they're even above 30,000 at this point. It's impossible. And from all accounts, I hear that personnel's holding on. If you vest right now in January 1st, of 2024, you vested, you will not be counted until January 1st of 2025. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing there's a big play on the numbers with the amount of people leaving as well. But yeah, by all reports, all the cops are saying they're completely exhausted. They don't even want the overtime at this point. They've never seen so much overtime. They've never not been able to take so many days off. They're working every day. They're exhausted and they can't take it anymore. And what you're going to see is burnout amongst cops. You're going to see suicide rates. You're going to see more people resign, more people vest, more people retire. And we've predicted that time and time again, that you're going to see mass retirements. Right now, the personnel office is probably, and the pension section is probably flooded with people looking to retire. So over the past month now we said it's a week, right? We gave the week period, but over the past month, the NYPD has recorded 117 victims in 98 shootings. That's up 81 people shot in 74 incidents over the same month in 2023, a 44% rise in victims and a 32% bump in shootings. Now, again, if nobody's hit, right? Do we count that? Do we know? Do we trust that they're reporting every time a gun gets off in New York City? I'm not.
Well, especially not now. I wouldn't trust it with the encryption of radios. There's no accountability from the media to actually respond to these incidents to say, hey, was there a shooting here? Were shots fired? So we talked about this many times. There's different perceptions. People have their opinions on, whether encryption of radios is actually for safety or is it really to block the media so that the police department can give the perception that crime is down and actually not report particular shootings where no one is hit. I suspect that that's the reason for the encryption of radios. I mean, it's to block the media. No one's holding them accountable. Easily, they can not document or report a shooting when someone is not hit. especially if it's a revolver and there's no shells at a scene, there's no evidence preserved. There's nothing for the police department to be concerned unless someone actually comes forward and said they heard the shooting or there's a complete eyewitness. Other than that, it's easy for the police department just to hide that under the bed, which I'm skeptical of. Now, what I'm also curious about here, I'm looking at this particular article. It leaves out Staten Island, which I'm curious why, because right now Staten Island has probably the highest spike of any borough in comparison when it comes to percentages. So I am kind of skeptical why Staten Island was not included. Maybe that would skew the numbers, but that does definitely pique my interest.
Staten Island right now, as far as shootings, is flat. It's flat. It's it's actually down. It's actually down a little bit from last year. As far as overall crime in the last 2 years, in the last 13-year period, I mean, crime is up significantly in all aspects. But year to date, that's why they left Staten Island off. It's kind of flat on shootings. It's actually down a little bit in shootings and shooting victims this year. But I think that, they give a map and they put a bunch of shootings that happened on here. They're all terrible. I mean, they're all people that shouldn't have been shot, didn't deserve to be shot. But I think the worst thing here is you have 2 girls, 9 and 11, wounded by stray bullets at the Hilltop Playground in Brownsville on June 3rd at 9 p.m. I mean, it's a summer night. It's 9 o'clock at night, and you have a 9-year-old and 11-year-old getting shot by stray bullets. Horrific.
It's interesting that you said that, right? Because what I did find throughout my career, especially when there's an uptick in gang violence, which you have to put your finger on the pulse at all times. And we definitely don't see that right now. Unfortunately, when you start to get mass gang violence, this is what happens. It's kids that end up getting shot because there's crossfire. We have innocent pedestrians, especially now as the summer ticks up. Kids are out there playing, and that's who pays the price. I remember working in PSA 7. We had a 4-year-old shot at a barbecue. I mean, it's just horrific. But now this is a quite often occurrence. This is not a phenomenon that's here and there. This is happening quite often. And we see kids that are really susceptible to this crime increase that the New York City administration that we have right now wants to deny to the public and tell you that your perception is not reality. Look, even an anonymous figure in here, a Brooklyn cop, said it's pretty much out of control. And that's exactly what's going on right now. It's out of control. It's not just shootings, it's robberies. Every crime category, we are seeing an uptick. And not only are we seeing it in the data, we feel it. The residents of New York City are tired. They feel it. And this summer, I said right now, it's impossible for the police department to keep their finger on the pulse, because simultaneously, while they're going to try to have omnipresence for these shootings, we still have a migrant crisis of military-aged males right now, or that are committing the most heinous acts in the city, which include the rape of a 13-year-old girl. It's completely out of control right now what's going on. In addition to that, we have daily and nightly protests, which are going to ramp up, especially in the summer months. While weather is good, it's going to be easily accessible for these paid agitators to be out there, and the city is going to be engulfed in crime.
I agree. And while you see the amount of people carrying guns on New York City streets at a time that, like, it's the 1990s pre-Giuliani all over again and guns are everywhere, while you're seeing this on every news article, cops being shot, people being robbed with firearms, legal immigrants robbing people with firearms, legal immigrants shooting at cops. You get the city hall spokesperson, Kayla Mamalek. Kayla follows me on Twitter. Thank you, Kayla, for the follow. So she responded to this data by saying, Mayor Eric Adams has been clear that public safety is the prerequisite to prosperity. Apparently, we're not going to be too prosperous then, huh? So she says, following the double-digit decreases in shootings in both 2022 and 2023, with both shooting incidents and number of shooting victims down citywide so far this year, in addition to overall crime being down, the NYPD is aware and laser focused on addressing the uptick this month. Additional resources are being deployed to the impacted precincts. We will not rest till New Yorkers are both safe and feel safe. So again, they're going to play the more of the perception versus reality, while we sit here and play the reality versus perception that they're trying to paint. And that is complete perception, because although she is correct when she comes down to the shooting and the shooting victims in 2022 and 2023 being down, she is correct there. As far as crime, overall crime, it was not decreased in either of those years. It actually rose in both of those years. And crime being down for the period this year is still, crime is over 20% higher than when New York City mayor stepped into office. And that is a complete deflection, ladies and gentlemen. And it's by the good graces of God that those shooting crimes and shooting victims are down. It's not because of any implementation that New York City Mayor Eric Adams has done. It's not for one public safety thing other than God, good luck, and the hard work of the men and women in the New York City Police Department who continue to stand on the shore as the tide rolls in and try to fight it from coming in with buckets. And unfortunately, they haven't been given the tools to be successful.
Again, we talk about the police department. We're critical of the NYPD. And I want the public to understand, especially our viewers right now, we are not critical of the rank and file. Have there been some controversial incidents where we have been critical of particular members of the rank and file? Yes, because we have to give a fair assessment. This is New York's Finest Retired and Unfiltered. Okay, so we're not going to favor the cops 1,000%. If there's going to be a mistake, we're going to be fair and give a proper assessment. But overall, we support the overwhelming majority of the rank and file. They are out there doing their job as they're paid and trained to do, according to the crime trends that are happening in the city. Crime is absolutely up right now. You don't even need the data. You could just hear it. You hear the news every day. You see it. You see what's going on here. You feel it. The entire country is talking about the effects of New York City. It's become Fear City again. And it's a complete disaster right now with what's going on in the city. And the New York City Police Department, the leadership, has absolutely no plan that can be sustainable and effective going into the summer, especially with a low diminished department. Their ideology right now to deflect you from what's going on with the attrition rate of the NYPD is technology. They'll talk about drones. Drones are going to respond to 911 calls. They'll talk about drones doing surveillance. They'll talk about drones being applicable and a capability to assist them in saving people when we're swimming this summer at the beach. This is just complete gaslighting. It's a complete deflection. It's actually a contribution to the defund the police movement, which ultimately affects you, the New York City resident. That affects your public safety, to defund the police. We need police officers out there. I can tell you this. I don't care how much technology you have right now. The most important thing is that human element, those boots on the ground. We need our police officers who know the streets of New York City and know how to deal with people, understand compassion, and actually do good police work. I support the rank and file. They're doing their job. They're getting more firearms out there because there are more firearms out there. That's the reality. Their arrests correspond with the streets, with the crime trends, the patterns. And no matter what, there's 80 some odd patterns going on in New York City right now. 80 some odd patterns. They can never say, and I will say that, they can never say that crime is down until those patterns are closed.
On Saturday night, 2 people were shot inside of Livonia Park in Brooklyn, Brownsville neighborhood. A 53-year-old woman hit in the leg and torso, and a man, 70, hit in the left leg, according to police. It was one of 5 shootings during the course of that day. On June 11th, an armed bystander shot a 39-year-old man who was menacing a street food vendor with a knife in Midtown Manhattan, pulling the gun and firing as the scuffle escalated. The victim was hit. The day before, an 84-year-old woman sitting in her walker in East Flatbush was hit by a stray bullet in her left arm and rushed to the hospital, where she was treated for non-life-threatening injuries. It's a miracle, victim Althea Lawson told the Post from a hospital bed. I don't have enough tongue to tell God thanks. I'm still here today. Thank God it never hit me in the head. And then the Post goes on to to go back to the official narrative, which is despite the recent spike in gunplay, most major crimes have dipped in the Big Apple over the last year, including a 15% dip in murders so far this year compared to 2023.
I mean, again, that's just complete gaslighting the public. This whole ideology of perception versus reality. I think it's actually, to the New York City resident, I think it's just completely insulting that this information is actually provided to the public. Crime is absolutely up. Again, I'm going to say this. I'm going to make this bold statement. There's 80 some odd patterns going on in the city right now that have a correlation to the military age males, illegal aliens in New York City. 80 some odd patterns in comparison to when Mayor Eric Adams was not the mayor. 80 some odd patterns. So we don't know, right? We don't know the actual data. We're going to have to look into it. Each pattern could have 5 to 10 crimes. One pattern could have 20 crimes. We don't know. So the numbers in this is just a complete lie that they did not provide to the public. In a recent interview, Ed Caban spoke. It was called Behind the Badge, and he said that they have the migrant crisis under control and there's no issues going on. He failed to tell you that there's 80 some odd patterns. And I'm sure, again, we don't have the data. I'm sure those patterns may be linked to shootings. Those patterns may be linked to stabbings or other quite horrific incidents. It's another lie to the public. And again, it's perception versus reality. And your perception without the data, which you don't need, is your reality.
So I just said that like crime's up over 20% since New York City mayor took office. And this is what the NYPD spokesperson had to say about all this. And again, I hate when it's the NYPD spokesperson. They should be named. They're public servants. If you're going to say something on the record, you should have to use your name, Tariq Shepard, or whoever works for you. In DCPI, their name should be printed. If you're going to sell the ice cream, you should wear the name tag. So felony assaults are also up. I'm sorry. The NYPD spokesperson said overall crime is down 2% in 2024. And the dip in homicide means 29 fewer people injured by gunfire and 27 fewer victims of murder so far. Homicides are also down. During the same 28-day period solely focused on by the Post, homicides, in fact, are down another 3.6% compared to the same period last year, the spokesperson said. The NYPD has seized nearly 3,200 illegal guns off the street this year. The spokesperson added, this is just one of the ways the city has made considerable progress in reducing crime and violence since the start of this administration, and New Yorkers can count on the NYPD's ongoing vigilance in every neighborhood. We will continue to use this momentum to ensure that New York remains the safest big city in the nation. And I'm sure that spokesperson probably added get stuff done and they just didn't print it.
Well, again, I think it's, just more lying to the public. I don't think they should brag about this. So I had seen something many years ago. I have to find the source. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was in some type of training I had in the police department. And I remember the issue came up. We talked about gunshot wounds. And it was about training where a police officer may be faced with adversary and when to pull that trigger and when not to pull that trigger. And it came up the issue about how the percentage of gunshot wounds that are survivable. And I think I was actually surprised, and I don't have the actual. I know some people may call me out on it. I don't have the actual data in front of me or the source, but I did hear it, and it's somewhere. 80-something% of gunshot wounds are survivable. Right? There are particular spots that you would say, "Wow, how could that be?" Because most people that are looking to kill someone else, they have the intent, are going to shoot them in a spot that is going to be deadly. So, but 80-some-odd% of shootings are survivable. So I don't think this is something to brag about. It actually just shows the further indication of the gaslighting that this administration gives to the public. Tell you, look, yeah, we have 50% of shootings. Oh, but we have less homicides. But what about these people out there right now who've been shot, who've been injured? They've been pretty much maimed. They sustained life-threatening injuries that may threaten their lives in years to come. But they'll sideline you and they'll try to keep you short-sighted by saying, well, we have less homicides. But they're failing to tell you how many people have been shot, or maybe how many people had to run from gunfire, or how many people were in the vicinity, at close proximity to actual gunfire, and it was not reported because it was from a revolver. There's no rounds on the scene. And maybe the police department is hiding that with this encryption right now. Again, more lying to the public. What they also don't tell you is why homicides are also down, even when crime is up in this era compared to many years ago, is the technology. The system is much better what's set up at the hospital. When someone is shot and the police department is on the scene and they're given radio transmission and they're coordinating with EMS, when EMS responds and puts that person in the ambulance, they're already in connection with the hospital, and the OR is already setting up the emergency room. So when someone gets to the hospital, everything's already set up, because seconds count when someone is shot or, God forbid, stabbed. And that's what they're not telling you also, is technology is much better. There's a much better system and help. So the fact that homicides are down is not a complete indication that crime is better and your prosperity to health and wellness in New York City is on the rise because of Mayor Eric Adams.
I think it's just complete gaslighting. Crime's up, violent crime's up, more people carrying guns on New York City streets than ever. You could give me whatever stats you want. It's obvious. It's completely obvious. What else we got in the post today? June 19th, 2024, 10:57 p.m. This article comes out. It's going to shock you people. You're going to be shocked. Moped riding armed robbers steal man's $100,000 watch outside our iconic New York City eatery Carbone. $100,000 Philippe Petit watch gone. I wonder who did that. I wonder if this is part of the 80 patterns of robbery stemming from illegal immigrants. I wonder if this person's going to be illegal immigrants, a pair of gun-toting, moped-riding robbers. Why is this being allowed on New York City streets? I keep saying that they're crushing mopeds. They're crushing mopeds, but who are they getting them from? Delivery workers? Because they're obviously not getting them on two illegal immigrants driving around with no plate, no registration on New York City streets, masked with firearms. Those aren't the mopeds getting, obviously.
You know what's funny? I was actually watching this video that's underneath the title here, and what popped up was a drone. And that's probably what they want responding to these incidents here. You know, according to Kaz Daughtry of the NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Operations. This is absolutely insane. Look at this. Moped riding armed robbers. You got mopeds out of control right now in the city. And it's not just a quality of life condition anymore. I think the New York City administration is gaslighting the public, having them believe that, you know, yes, the dream team and, you know, the khaki pants, they're out there confiscating scooters and arresting people with scooters. But these are low-hanging fruits. Are they actually targeting the people that are committing these heinous crimes? Because I think that the mopeds right now is the source of movement and transportation to commit these crimes. Why? Because it's reflective of these military-age males, of how they of their mode of transportation back in the countries that they came from. I know because I did a lot of traveling. In most countries, scooters is the top form of transportation, especially, I spent a long time in Asia. Everyone has a scooter in Asia, and in South America also. And that's how they commit their crimes, because of traffic, small streets that are not actually, on par with what goes on in America, completely paved. They use scooters, and they're using scooters to commit their crimes.
It's absolute breakdown of society. It's an absolute breakdown of quality of life in New York City. In January, I go to Bay Ridge. I go to one of my favorite eateries on 3rd Avenue, and I go to Bay Ridge, and I'm walking on the block with my wife and my 2 kids. And 2 times while I'm on that block, there are males on scooters driving on the sidewalk. I yell at both of them. I scream at the top of my lungs because they're coming 20, 30 miles an hour. To me, you're using deadly physical force towards me. If you come towards me, I'm kicking you off that fucking scooter. Like, that's how I feel. My life's endangered. My wife's endangered. My children are endangered. You're doing 20, 30 miles an hour on a sidewalk. 2 times in one block. 2 times in one block, there's a male driving a moped on a scooter in Bay Ridge, Justin Brannan's district, by the way. That's the 68th precinct, by the way. And the street looks like Mogadishu. 3rd Avenue, there's scooters everywhere. There's no traffic rules at all. The mopeds, they do U-turns and on one ways. They do whatever they want. There's zero enforcement of quality life. Now, those guys that were on the scooters, they were delivery people. Those are the people I think we're going after. Usually, you don't see 2 people on a scooter delivering food. But when you see 2 people on a New York City street, particularly 2 males on top of a scooter, That should be the people we target. New York City wanted to implement registration and insurance for bicycles. Why are we not doing it for vehicles that go 25 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour? This is absolute insanity. I've seen cops stop children for riding bikes on the sidewalk. I'm like, what are you, out of your mind? The kid needs to ride the bike on the sidewalk. They're going to get hit by a car. What are you doing? What are you doing? Don't ever do this again. I get it's against the law in New York City to ride a bike on a sidewalk, but we went from that. We went from where children are being stopped for riding their bike on a sidewalk, which they should, by the way, because or else they'll get hit by a car in New York City, to grown men driving 30 miles an hour down a sidewalk on a moped. And now this is the result. You import the third world like Eric Adams did, and now you have third world crime. This is 8:45 p.m. The duo walked up to the 39-year-old victim outside of Greenwich Village, which Greenwich for the last 30 years has been so safe. You could hang out there till 3, 4 in the morning, no problems. They walked up to him and they pressed a black firearm to his chest, demanding the watch.
Absolutely. Listen, anybody ever watch like Discovery Channel? You see like some or History Channel. You see some of these crime shows that actually stem from these third world countries. That's exactly what they're bringing here. You know, people say, well, we have to support illegal immigrants. I support immigration. Let me tell you something. I served overseas in Iraq, and some of the guys that I served with didn't even have their citizenship. They were there on permanent resident cards. They had green cards, but they were here because they loved this country, and they cried when they came home from Iraq. They cried when they finally, some of them got their U.S. citizenship, and they cried because it was so dear to them. It was important to them because they loved this country, and they brought their culture with them. Their culture, it's important that we have culture in this country. But what's not important is we're not only are we bringing culture, but now that we're bringing military-age males that are unvetted into this country, we're bringing their crimes. We're bringing their culture of crimes. These are crimes that are committed in third world countries. This is not something that we're accustomed to in New York City, where we have drive-bys on scooters. That is not a particular New York City crime. John, you and I both know we serve the streets of New York City. My cops that are out there watching this, you know damn well that's not a crime that we're accustomed to, especially in the metropolis that we're in right now. And we see them navigating on these scooters, and they're using it to perpetuate their crimes because it's easy to evade the system. You shoot someone, you're on a scooter that goes 25, 30 miles per hour, you're traveling through traffic, you're 5-10 miles away in no time. You're in a different borough. So it's really tough to catch these and make these apprehensions, especially with a diminished police department. And also the fact that we don't have an anti-crime team anymore who could actually watch these behavioral indicators. We have khaki pants out there. Yeah, I give them credit. They're doing their job, but there's only so much they can do. We have a diminished police department, and we have a sanctuary city where these illegal aliens are flourishing. We need to stop this now. We have to stop protecting them. Sanctuary city is exactly that. It's a city that protects these military-age males.
It's absolutely what it is. That's absolutely, we're protecting criminals. We're actually not even protecting them. We're funding them. They're taxpayer funded. They get free healthcare. They get shelter. They get clothing. They get $350 a week on a debit card. So you're actually funding it. New York City taxpayers fund this crime. Look at this. This one. Honestly, it enrages me. You know. I have a daughter that's visually impaired. This drives me nuts. Candy sellers. Does anybody remember the old Chinese women selling DVDs and CD in New York City? Do you know how many times the NYPD locked up those women? Do you know how many times those women were arrested? It was absolutely ridiculous. I'm like, leave this woman alone. But you had some loser commanding officers like, oh, get that CD DVD girl. Who was she arrested? Who was she a danger to? Nobody. She wasn't robbing anybody. You were in no danger. Your wife wasn't in danger. Your children weren't in danger. She was selling bootleg CDs. But we went after these people like it was like they were the kingpins and they were taking down the movie industry. Absolutely ridiculous. And I seen guys get off on arresting them. Complete losers. The equivalent of locking up a woman for having a glass of wine who's not drunk. It's the equivalent of that. It's a complete ridiculous, unnecessary arrest. Whatever. But we went from that to now we have a candy seller right? I wonder. Let's zoom in on him, Eric. Let's see. Is he a New York City resident? Well, now he is. He looks like a taxpayer-funded New York City resident. He doesn't look like he's here illegally or with a green card. He's selling on the platform, on the Neptune Avenue platform. He's selling candy, which we allow, and he reaches in a blind man's purse or whatever bag that he's carrying and takes his cell phone and runs off. Here we go. More third world crime. Import the third world, get third world crime. Here we go. We don't do anything for this. Transit safe, right, Mike? Right, Mike Kemper? Right? You keep going on Sid Rosenberg's show, who doesn't know a damn thing about policing or crime, but talks about it like he does. You go on his show and you lie to New York City public when disabled people, elderly, anybody who's not a physically fit male, and even them, are in danger because we're seeing a lot of people using firearms, and we're putting good citizens at a disadvantage because what if you're a fit male and you legally own a firearm on New York City, like I had pointed out in the past, you can't carry it on a New York City subway platform. You can't ride a New York City train with it.
You know, you're bringing back memories. I remember when I was a rookie in the 120 Police and working Staten Island, any cops out there, if you know the area. I remember most of the time we would work in Stapleton, we were working in Park Hill, but sometimes we would work Forest Avenue. There'd be a rash of robberies. And I'll never forget, I was working on Forest Avenue. John, you definitely know the spot. It was around by, I think it was like the path mark over there or something. And I'll never forget exactly what he said, but there was an Asian woman, and she was always selling those DVDs and stuff. And like, we didn't care. Like, you know, we wanted to address real crime. But I guess one day she saw us and she got nervous and she threw her DVDs on the floor. She took off running. It was just like an older lady, so she could barely run. So we were laughing. It's like, you know, what do you got to do when you're brand new on the job? We got to voucher this stuff, right? So we walked over, we go to grab it. We're just all porn. Like, what are we going to do with this stuff? And so we end up having to voucher it. But you're absolutely right. Listen, that's why it's so important, right? You know, we joke about this stuff. But listen, there is man's law. There's laws, right? Is it illegal to have trademark counterfeiting DVDs? Yes. Is it illegal to do certain things in this city, like jaywalking and such and that? But it's important of how we apply these laws, right? And that's why it's so important that we do intrusive police work, right? If we have this woman that's out there selling DVDs who has no impact on public safety, who's not hurting anyone, am I going to address that? Not necessarily. But if I have illegal military-age males that potentially could be a part of a robbery pattern, but we haven't identified them yet, and they're out there selling illegal trademark counterfeiting items, well, that's the opportunity to address that incident with that low-hanging fruit, with that low-level crime, that intrusive police work under broken windows, which gives you the opportunity, a pretextual stop, which is a legal justification to stop someone, to have an interaction, to make an arrest. Those are the tools we need to use. The police department, the leadership has to support those tools. But Michael Kemper will gaslight the public, and he'll tell the New York City Council at a hearing that 97% of their ridership that have committed fare evasion will not be stopped and frisked. They will just be given a summons, not a criminal summons, a civil summons, and they'll be on their merry way. That is not addressing the public safety issue.
Absolutely. And just so we're all aware, robbing a disabled person of their phone is considered a grand larceny. So this individual, if anyone's familiar with him, is wanted for a grand larceny. NYPD Crime Stoppers numbers is below, 1-800-577-TIPS, right? Call them. Let us know if you see this individual selling candy, right? This illegal immigrant. And just to go further on that, John Schell had recently stated that, we need to be able to deport violent. That's the key word. Violent people who are convicted of violent felonies. So this person, if he was ever convicted of the grand larceny, which it's almost impossible. It's like finding a unicorn in the New York City criminal justice system at this point, is to get someone convicted of anything. Other than if your name's Donald Trump, you're a conservative, or you're a whistleblower, or speak out against the NYPD, right? It's the only time you'll ever be convicted. So John Schell said, if you're stealing a bag of chips, What's the big deal? So this is the equivalent of stealing a bag of chips in John Shell's eyes, because if this person was convicted, which he never would be in our justice system, he would be removed. But instead, we're going to give him free clothing, free shelter, food. We're going to give him everything while you have to go to work to earn all of those things. And if you don't, you'll be homeless. And this individual will be government funded with a fresh refilled debit card. So just again, look where we were. Look where we were. We were arresting old Chinese women for CD DVD. We were arresting them when we had zero crime patterns stemming from them. And now the fact that we have people robbing people, sticking people up, people not selling things, running away with money, using candy, grown men, we don't go after them. We don't arrest them. We leave them hands off. We're completely hands off with them. And at the same token, we're going after delivery guys as they're working and stealing their mopeds. And you're leaving two males, two predators, driving around on New York City streets looking to rob someone. Eric, what would you think at the height right now? We go to New York City. Miraculously, the chocolate administration decides, you know what? We're going to put some old guys back to have them train the youth on how to actually perform broken windows policing, how to articulate stops, how to use the law, how to make constitutional stops and constitutional arrests, instead of having people in your cabinet that have under 20 arrests, like Eric Adam, who has actually under 10 arrests for his entire career. Have actually people who've made a lot of arrests, testified in court, seen things through prosecution. They put us back on the street, and we see two males driving around with masks and hoods at 8:45 at night on a summer night. One of them's on the back of a moped. What are we going to do, Eric?
Oh, absolutely. We're going to make that stop because we're real police. That's what we do. We do the intrusive police work. We both did anti-crime. We did plainclothes work. We're going to make that stop. We're going to make that street encounter, and we're going to detain that person. And you know what? We're going to see it thorough. And possibly, you know what? We'll possibly end up making an arrest. And if not, we're going to gather the information. We'll probably pass on to the detective squad. And we'll know that there's 80 some odd robbery patterns and say, look, this person may be linked to this pattern, and give them all the indicators and all the behavioral indicators that we identified. But we're losing that, right? Because you and I, you know what we'd also get? We would get a civilian complaint. We would get a civilian complaint also for stopping someone for abuse of authority. That would be the complaint. For threat to arrest, because we would explain to them that you can't be driving the scooter on the sidewalk if we had no other tools or other resources to actually make that arrest. But we would give that person a warning and let them know that they're riding on the sidewalk, whatever the case is. But we would definitely get a civilian complaint. We might even face some civil liability. And that, you know, it's unfortunate right now, but that's why I say, listen, for the cops that are out there, you're doing your job. If you can't stop criminals because you're going to get a civilian complaint, I need you to stand on moral principle and say, well, I'm not going to stop good, obliging citizens either, because that's what's happening, right? I hear it all the time. You know, cops, they talk to me anonymously and tell me, like, listen, we're actually afraid to interact with criminals because they're protected. And we end up summoning and arresting the good people of New York City. But you know what? You have to stand on your moral principle and say, you know what? I'm not doing that. You got to band together and say, we're not going to do that. These are the people you should be targeting. And if you can't target them, which we know that you can't, it's a failure on your leadership. And that's why this leadership is gaslighting the public. They'll say, oh, we've made 80 some odd or 90 some odd arrests. Who are they arresting? Who are they targeting? Low-hanging fruits. They're not addressing the problem. This is extremely problematic. And I'm telling you right now, if me and John ever got appointed as commissioners of the New York City Police Department, there would be a complete overhaul of the leadership. Kaz Daughtry, you'd be out. Tariq Shepard, action hero, you would be out too. John Shell, you'd be on your way also. Michael Kemper, you know what? You'll be taking the train or you'll be taking the bus.
Yeah, but Eric, you're missing the whole point there. We would get to CCRB, the case would be thrown out, but we would get a really cool Twitter photo with the firearm, and then they'd endanger our lives, our family, put our names out there for all the anti-cop people to post our 50As and to put lawsuits and file CCRBs and internal affairs complaints against us. So we would get that notoriety. You know, we'd get, oh, thank you. You're the men and women of the New York City Police Department are out there protecting you. We would get all that great stuff on Twitter, though. We'd be Twitter famous for about 4 seconds. So, you know, you're missing the point there, right? Like that's public safety. That's public. Twitter is public safety. Followers and likes and retweets are public safety in the eyes of the upper echelon of the NYPD.
You know what? You're right. Right. We say Mayor Eric Adams says the prerequisite to public safety is prosperity in public safety. But maybe actually I've been right. I said, a long time ago, foreshadowing that these commanding officers compete with each other on Twitter, who could have better Twitter pages. And that's what we see. These precincts now, they're encompassed with social media. Everything they do is not even organic anymore. It's so artificial. Oh, we'll stand here, take a picture, do this, do that, because it's going to look good on Twitter. Or you know what? Let's go do this operation because it's going to look good on Twitter. They're not going to do certain operations because it's effective for public safety. They're doing certain operations because it's a tale, it's a story on Twitter. This social media, I honestly think social media has been the poison for the NYPD. Why? Not because it's poison in itself. If used properly, it could be a great tool, like anything else. A car is a great tool, but if used improperly, it could be a weapon. And that's what's going on with this administration, because their egos are over everything, and they've empowered themselves with the tools and the power of social media. Social media has been completely misused by this administration. Instead of using it to help public safety, they used it to help their self-serving careers.
So what else do we got? One more thing before we run out of here. We're starting to lose a little bit of connection on this live, and I don't want to drop. But before we go, the savage animal who held a knife to two 13-year-olds, tied them up, and raped a 13-year-old girl was apprehended by the community. He apprehended her. He raped her and tied up her male friend and made him watch while he raped her. And he actually videotaped the whole thing. So Queens DA Melinda Katz. Melinda, hope you're listening to this, right? Another one of my followers on Twitter. We charged the Corona man with the first-degree rape, kidnapping, and other crimes for allegedly attacking two 13-year-old kids in Kissimmee Park. The horrific assault strikes at the very core of our society. He faces up to 25 years to life in prison if convicted. So I don't even think that that's harsh enough, but I just want to point out, she notes Corona man. Like he lives in Queens, like he's a resident in New York City, like he's a New York City resident. No, he's an Ecuadorian illegal immigrant who crossed over illegally into our borders. He should get life in jail. I honestly don't even believe he should breathe the same air that we do. But that's a story for another day. Eric, what do you think about Melissa Katz's the Queens District Attorney's statement? Melinda Katz, excuse me.
Dude, I'm so glad that you and I, we grab onto the same things. I was thinking the same things. Listen, it was a great statement. She actually took a stance on this, but she had to pander to her woke progressive politics and ensure that she referred to him as Corona man. He is not a resident of New York City. He's a military-age male from Ecuador that does not belong in the city, that was completely unvetted. He didn't bring himself to come here for a better life. He brought himself to continue his heinous acts. He is a disgusting, vile human being. And if anything, that's how she should have addressed him, is that he's a disgusting, vile human being from a third world country that was unvetted, that should not be here. I guarantee Ecuador didn't want him either. This is a sick person that we do not need in the city. But that's what we have right here. We have district attorneys that are part of the social justice program that pander to this woke progressive system. And that's exactly part of woke progressive politics, is this illegal alien migrant crisis, which is really ultimately military age males. That's what we have here. Military age males. And when we say military age, just like military grade when it comes to products, is that they have training. They're at the age that they could do harm in this country. Realize what comes behind that definition. Just to go on a side note, I just thought it was kind of funny. Did you see the interview of one of the kids that was involved in the apprehension? It was hysterical. He was sitting talking to the reporters, and he had like a wad of money in his hands, and it was quite funny. And we know what the indication of what he was doing out there. But listen, thank you for apprehending him, but it was quite funny interview.
I didn't even believe any of the people that came forward. I know that there was a female yelling at him. I saw her grabbing his hair and yelling, "You're a rapist." And I heard her on the video. So there was definitely a female there. But I saw a couple of males and everybody's thanking them. These guys are heroes. I think they were full of shit. I think most of them, I don't think they were there. The kid with the money in his hand, someone should have smacked him in his head off the chair. Absolutely ridiculous. Looked like a loser with a bunch of WADA singles in there. Yeah, look at me, son. Like, I don't know what the hell that was. But again, this is, Eric, by the way, all we talked about today was what's in the news this morning. So for anyone that's like thinks we're cherry picking things, this is from late last night into this morning. Just what's on Twitter, what's popping on Twitter. That's it. Look, wanted for a grand larceny, aka what John Shell would figure as a bag of chips. Another two. Guess what? Am I racist for saying it? Guess what they are? Wow. I don't think that they came here legally. I don't think they did. Somebody should tell Melinda Katz, a.k.a. I'm not sure if it's true, but I heard a rumor. She's Curtis Lewa's baby mama. You know, if that's true, I don't know. But somebody should tell her that these people are not New York City residents. And they should be treated as if they entered our borders illegally and referred to. We cannot fix problems we cannot identify. If we cannot identify the problems, we cannot fix them. If we cannot identify crimes, they can't be properly charged. So I appreciate the work. I do. Stop with the woke nonsense. Stop letting people control your words. You know this is wrong. Everybody knows this is wrong. New York City is not the same city it was. Look at these wanted flyers. This is one day, late last night into today. This is everything I'm sorry, this is not everything. This is just a few things of what happened. That's what's in the news from last night to early this morning.
I think it's important that you just said that. Listen, we're about to wrap this up. We're getting close. My battery's almost dead here. But before we wrap this up, just think about that. We are now police media. We were able to provide you almost an hour of crime issues that are going on in New York City, and we haven't even scratched below the surface. That's what's going on in New York City. So forget about the data, forget about the numbers. We're giving you the news of what's going on here just in a snippet of information, and there's far more crimes that we have not reported here. And it's not that we're reporting it and the news is not telling you. The news is giving you this information. We are giving you this information. So don't let the police department gaslight you along with Eric Adams and tell you that you're living in a prosperous city, the safest city in New York City, because the information that we provided to you is a complete opposition and not a reflection of what Mayor Eric Adams is telling you. These pictures, these stories, this is New York City's reality.
100%. New York's finest, Retired and Unfiltered podcast. We're bringing you the reality that the pretend stuff done team doesn't bring you. They just bring you the perception. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. Eric, you got anything before we go?
265 Police Live. Keep watching. Thank you so much. Don't let them gaslight you. Take care.
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901-BLUE. That's 888-901-BLUE.
Well, I don't know what happened, but the closing's not working.